Welcome to Kingdom Mothers Rise Up, where I encourage and equip you to heal your heart and renew your mind so you can live the fully abundant life Jesus promised you. Let's go. It's time to move.
Sometimes we think, if I'm going to be courageous, I'm not going to be afraid. We actually can't be courageous without something to be afraid of. There has to be fear for us to be courageous, because if there's nothing we're trying to overcome, then we wouldn't need the bravery, we wouldn't need the courage. Last week, we talked about the shame cycle from the story of the woman at the well. There's a courage cycle too. Courage means lots of things to lots of people. So I like to start any topic basically with like vocabulary and defining. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I use this word. The original definition of courage is from the Latin word cur, which means heart. And so the original definition was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. So I thought that's a really beautiful definition of courage. So that again was to tell the story of who you are with your whole heart. And the Google definitions for courage, the first one is the ability to do something that frightens you. And the other is strength in the face of pain or grief. So the ability to do something that frightens one, or strength in the face of pain and grief. Sometimes we think, if I'm going to be courageous, I'm not going to be afraid. We actually can't be courageous without something to be afraid of. And I think, I don't know, a lot of times like in worship songs where they talk about being fearless, that's a misnomer. There has to be fear for us to be courageous, because if there's nothing we're trying to overcome, then we wouldn't need the bravery, we wouldn't need the courage. So from the woman's story in day 2, like she had plenty of fear and insecurity from her situation and the way the culture had to deal with her illness. But then she also had the strength and the ability to do something. And so that was why I called it the courage cycle, because we see that over and over again. Like she has the fear and insecurity, but then she chooses to do something. And then when she chooses to do that, like the fear rushes back in again. Her insecurities didn't disappear or suddenly leave her alone when she decided to be courageous. Like she stepped over them and a new wave came, and she stepped over them and a new wave came. So the courage cycle looks like making a move of courage and then being attacked by the enemy with doubt or fear or accusation, or whatever he knows has worked on you in the past, because he's keeping notes. He knows what works. So he will use the same things over because it saves him energy. So she gathered her courage in the first place to decide that she was going to go out and find Jesus, and that she knew she was going to be healed. But she had to overcome the fear, like of the people in the town, if she could get sent back before she got to Jesus. And so she had the fear of the people, and she had the pain too. Like one of the definitions of courage was, the strength in the face of pain and grief. And she definitely had the pain and grief to overcome. And see if I can. So she heads out to the village and she hears the people. And then when she gets to the place where she's like, okay, this will work, then the thoughts come crashing back in again. What if I don't get healed? What if somebody sees me? What if the crowd has pushed Jesus away? But then she lets courage rise again. Like, no, I'm going to stay. I'm going to trust that he's going to get here because I know this is what I need. And then again, the thoughts come rushing back. Like, you're such a mess. And why would this work for you? And why would the rabbi pay attention to you? And yet again, to let the courage rise up and reach out and touch his robe, So just that, calling it the courage cycle, that thinking, I stepped out to be brave and now I'm having all these insecurities, to not let the enemy tell you that you're failing or that you chose the wrong thing because now it's hard or because now you have these doubts. You're doing the right thing. That's exactly why he's attacking you. And in paying attention when those voices are coming, if they're saying, you are a failure, you don't measure up, who do you think you are? We don't talk to ourselves that way. We say, I'm a mess, or I'm a failure, or I did great. But we don't speak that way to ourselves. We don't say, you are a failure. So that's a key, that when you're hearing that way, God speaks to us that way too, not condemning, but you are my child. You are wonderful. You are beautiful. So knowing when you're hearing that someone else is speaking, it's not your thought. And if it's not an encouraging thought, then get rid of it. Don't listen to it anymore, or even like, okay, I know that's the enemy trying to push these buttons again. So I can just take that to the Lord and say, is there anything else I need to deal with here? Or can I just tell him to be quiet and leave me alone? And of course, we can tell him to be quiet and leave us alone either way. But, we can take it to the Lord and be like, is there anything else I need to deal with on this? Or is he just harassing me? But to know when you step out in courage, the enemy is going to harass you, because that's obviously not what he wants you to be doing. He didn't want that woman to be able to go out and be healed and to have a testimony that she was no longer unclean, and that Jesus really did have the power of God to forgive sins and to heal her. And I love that he was willing not just to have her body healed, but to stop and acknowledge her in a place that she wasn't supposed to be, not only because of her uncleanness, but just by being a woman, to approach the rabbi would have been very inappropriate. And for him to stop and acknowledge her in front of the crowd and call her out and call her daughter, that personal restoring identity to her after all of these years of having to be unclean and unworthy. He cares. It's not just about like him being God and being able to heal. He wants that relationship. He wants that identity restored too. Brene Brown talks about being vulnerable and like getting up the courage to have a hard conversation or whatever. And she says that it's been studied, the like super anxiety, super hard part lasts for 8 seconds. And so writable, it's 8 seconds of like, we build it up to like so big and like, I just can't handle this. And she's like, the research shows it's 8 seconds. Like if you just push through, and once you start, then, that courage and God's strength comes in, and yeah, maybe it's not fun, but we are made for this and we can do it. Hang on for those 8 seconds just to know we will survive. And he has healing for those hurt and painful parts, that we can bring those to him and have the love of a tender father that understands how hurt and how scared, and he's totally okay with it. Makes it easier to, because that was a picture I had for a long time of God sitting, arms folded across his chest. He was so big, I was sitting in the crook of his arm, head against his chest, and I spent a lot of time there just crying and feeling safe and experiencing things. I couldn't even see his face. I could be close and be okay. The other thing that I thought of out of her story was the labels and how damaging labels are. So, like, she was labeled unclean, which was very well intentioned. It was to keep people safe because they didn't have all of the technology we have to keep people safe in those situations. So it was well intentioned, but it was still wounding. Labels dehumanize and they disconnect us, because now, rather than being a woman, being my neighbor, being whatever her name was, she's unclean, or whatever other labels that we can come up with. Labels They dehumanize and they break us into us and them. Democrats and the Republicans. It's a label, it's an automatic divide because you fit in one or the other. And it's just that mentality of evangelical or charismatic, black or white, type A, type B, introvert, extrovert. Like, it doesn't matter what the label is. If we're not careful, it's a way to set up a division rather than to inform. We could take that as information that's helpful to understand someone, or especially in our hurried culture, to just be like, oh, I know what they're like because they have that label. And they're either like me or they're not because I have that label or I don't. And so just stood out to me how labeling others or allowing others to label us just creates such a disconnect and like a confidence on someone's part that I can know them because I know this label about them instead of really getting to know someone. But then also, like, we can label ourselves and put ourselves in boxes because of labels we've given ourselves. And one of the examples he gave me was when he told me I was a lighthouse. I was like, no, I'm not. But I know, just the idea that lighthouses were strong. And I was like, okay, that's a label I can accept. Like, I'll label myself strong. But it wasn't actually a healthy label because my idea of strong was you didn't need anything. Like, you were kind of, that I'm an island kind of thing. Like, I'm strong enough to do this all on my own. And so, of course, the next thing he told me was that lighthouses have needs. So, like, break down that idea of strong right there. But so, like, having that label of myself, like, okay, I'm strong, meant I can handle this. And, so there was all this stuff that went with that label that wasn't accurate and wasn't helpful. So just, labels can hurt our relationships with others, but it can hurt our relationship with ourselves too if we, label ourselves as not good at something, or, if we take on a label that the culture wants to give of just a mom, or, just whatever those different labels are. If we take them on, they can kind of keep us in a box because I don't know, like, it just, like my idea of strong, it comes with a whole set of stuff if we're not conscious of that, being a victim to something, like, that comes with a whole lot of stuff that you don't actually have to take. But if you're not being aware of it, if you take on that label or put that label on somebody else, it just keeps you from really getting close and getting to know who you're talking to or understanding their story, because you've got this false confidence of knowing because you've got this label.